Why did many believe that for some time a peace agreement could be reached with Hitler?
You have to go back to World War One, and it was such a horrible war, and so many men didn't come home, and the loss of life was astounding. So the prevailing attitude throughout Europe was like, no more war. We never want to do that again. And Hitler, on the other hand, he's like a Donald Trump type figure. He's like this charismatic figure who really wants to rise up and empower Nazi Germany, which had been defeated in the war, and everybody was poor, and Hitler gave them, a sense of empowerment. And so even as Hitler began secretly building the Nazi war machine, people in London, for instance, Winston Churchill was one of the lone people who said, we need to pay attention to this guy. He's a
Hmm.
bad guy. He wants war. He wants total war. He's building a war machine. And everybody thought Churchill was a warmonger and he was crazy. And people actually liked Hitler. The British people had an admiration for Hitler. And the world kind of saw him as a little bit of a joke. So nobody was terrified of Hitler. And then, slowly he began to, he went into the Sudetenland. He began picking off these little portions of surrounding countries and, border countries around Germany. But the thing he always said when he did this was, oh, I'm doing this so we can have peace. I'm trying to keep the peace and maintain the peace. And for the longest time, people believed him. And the turning point came about, I say 1934, 1935, where he became a very much more ominous individual. Even after the Hitler invaded Poland, there were people within the British government, Lord Halifax among them, and Chamberlain, who really believed that Hitler wanted peace, that we could maintain peace. In the meantime, Hitler is building up the secret book where he's listing all the places in England that troops will be stationed, all the people that will be rounded up and sent to prison camps. And Churchill, of course, is going to be assassinated the minute that Hitler comes in. So, like right up until just before the Battle of Britain, literally, there were still people who were saying we should try to make peace with Hitler because we're never going to beat him.
Yeah, because the way you wrote about what happened in Poland, the invasion in Poland, like I'm European, so I know it happened, but the details of it, and I looked it up on Google, like it's so sad that it isn't discussed more either because the way they like bombed it, it wasn't even like a clear target, right? It was like hit whatever you want to hit from schools to hospitals to just elderly homes, whatever.
Yeah, it was horrible. I mean, and you could imagine too, in those early moments of the war, you're a Polish citizen, you live in a small town, you're just waking up, and next thing you know, you have Stuka Ju-87 dive bombers, coming right out of the sky, screaming down on you, dropping bombs, like you said, on hospitals and churches, and just a staggering loss of life. And when you think about this, when bombings like that happens, it's not neat and surgical. Not everybody dies, but not everybody, you know, remains alive well. You lose arms, you lose legs, your face is cut up by shrapnel. It's a horrible thing.
And what was like the pivotal moment that the UK sentiment mostly went to, were not able to sign a peace agreement with Hitler?
Well, that didn't come until like right before the Battle of Britain. That's when Lord Halifax effectively left the government. But once Hitler invaded Poland, the British people realized that Hitler was a true menace and a true threat. And that's when the British people began having air raid warnings, and they were just terrified the British bombers were going to appear out over the skies. They were sending children to the countryside to get away from the cities, and it was just one of those things where what had once been a neat and organized and kind of ignorant populace all of a sudden was terrified of death from the skies, just like the people of Poland endured.